welcome. Austin.
Uh,
Yay. Hi, how are you?
how are you? Ooh,
Good,
how do I
good.
comment? Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, great. Yes, I can hear you as well. What are we doing today? So today we're going to be talking about the upcoming change in the Step 1 exam, going from a numerically scored exam to pass-fail. And then
Yeah.
we are going to, if there's extra time left over, we're going to give you guys the opportunity to kind of ask questions related to making your rank list and finishing up interview season and stuff like that. And just overall how to select your residency program since it's that time of year as well. But we're going to start out with talking about the changes coming up to the Step 1 exam. So as always, if you guys have questions now regarding this topic or whatever other topic, please just drop them in the chat box below and we will answer them as we kind of go through. And yeah, don't be shy, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what we're here for. So yeah, it looks like there's a lot of people here, so I can kind of get started. Sorry, go ahead.
I said I was scrolling through to see if there was any like people jumped in and asked questions right at the beginning, but no one did so far. So.
Okay, cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of people. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Cool. I wanted to ask, oh, I guess we should introduce ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Probably pretty helpful. So we'll start out with that. You can go ahead. You go first.
Okay, so I'm Austin Garcia. I'm a fourth-year medical student from Ross University, and I'm currently doing my fourth-year electives. I also did my course here in California, so I'm in like Southern California.
Awesome. And what do you want to do? Do you know what you want to do next year or not yet?
Ooh, I'm torn. I'm torn between two specialties, so we'll see.
Okay.
TBD.
Sounds good. TBD. I like it. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Kaitlyn, aka Prescription Fitness MD, and I am a second-year internal medicine resident in Philadelphia, and I'm a graduate from St. George's University, so I am a Caribbean IMG, and I was born here in the US, so I'm a USIMG. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I guess if you finished Step 1 already, correct? Because you're going into fourth year. So you took the numerically scored exam, yeah?
Correct. Yeah, I took it in COVID.
Perfect timing.
So I took it like last year, and then I started I guess last year, and then I started rotations in the December, and then I finished my cores around November, and at the beginning, very beginning, kind of end of October really, and then I took 1 month off to study for comp, which you're fully familiar with, and then now I'm in electives.
Awesome.
Taking Step 2 probably maybe March is kind of what I'm slated to do. So.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I think this will be an interesting topic because I guess you'll be applying with some people who have the pass-fail score, whereas you have a numerical score.
Yeah, because I think the way it kind of works, especially with us, like I am like Caribbean IMGs too, like because we start times a year. Because of COVID, I don't make the current match, so I will be in the next match, but I'll have a lot of months off. So there will be students that will have taken their pass-fail and this, but they have made, the new match. They'll be able to match with that score. And I think they did a poll on, I don't know the last stat, but when I took it, Match Resident had done a poll. Did you see? I don't know if you saw on their they shared do you have a score or not? And it was almost 50-50, 45-55. So it's kind of, half and half, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where the topic becomes really interesting because a lot of people, rightfully so, want to know how is this going to affect my application. And I think that is particularly this upcoming match cycle is going to be really interesting because I don't know that program directors have a good answer either for how they're going to select applicants, seeing that half of them are going to have a score and half of them are just going to have a pass-fail. So I think really nobody knows the answer how this upcoming match cycle is going to go. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I've kind of asked that of like some program directors that I know, like, what is this about? And the same answer, I feel like they probably know as much as maybe we do. I don't know. I think it's going to be more to step two. Personally, I've heard some residents have said that, you know, that they, when they're looking at it, they're kind of looking more at the step two, because that is a score, like more clinical indicator now that you've, you know, at least gone through 1 year of or core rotations is when you sit for that. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think even when I was applying, when there was no talk at all about step one going PassFail, it was still just numerical across the board. There was not even any mention of this. Where I did my rotations, I heard a few program directors talking about how most of them select based off of step two criteria anyways, just because it is more clinically relevant, and it kind of gives them a better idea of how you're going to perform in residency. And then ultimately for at least for internal medicine on the ABIM internal medicine boards, there's a little bit better correlation than there is with just the basic science information from step one to begin with. So a lot of them have shied away from using it anyways, and maybe that's part of the driving factor where USMLE decided to just say, hey, time to make this PassFail. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking when they decided to do it, but this upcoming cycle is going to be quite interesting.
I think I'm correct. I know some people have asked. I'm pretty sure I looked up dance previously. I haven't looked recently, but I think that if you have a score, you're getting it, your score is reported. You know, and then if you have pass fail, then that's reported. So I think the question is like, okay, is it gonna hurt me if I have a score and somebody else doesn't? And I think that was the challenge. I think for what I've heard of some people that were gonna take it towards the end of this year, or right change. Like, should they like go take it right before the change, or should they wait until it goes pass fail? You know, just delay like a month or so and have the pass fail. But it seems like I've heard from, you know, other IMGs that they think that having a score would outset them from, you know, US students, you know, especially if they have high marks, they can prove that they have high marks, versus, you know, a pass fail, you don't know if you just made the cutoff or you were an exceptional student on that exam.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in terms of a lot of the people who have the hesitation around, you know, whether they should have taken this like, you know, early January, late December and tried to like get it out of the way with the score, I think that, you know, there always is a benefit. And if you do well, it's going to serve you well, right? I think
Right.
that, you know, if you do well on step one, the chances of you doing well on step two are also very high, right? Because a lot of it builds off of your step one knowledge. And so I think that it puts you in a good position if you have a good numerical score. But I think likewise, if you do take it, and you take the numerical exam and you don't do as well as you hope, you still always have that chance on step two to kind of rebound yourself. And program directors do really, really care about the increase between step one and step two score. That's one of the most important things to them. Even if you don't do well on step one, if you crush step two, they see that as like a very, very, very positive mark. And so if you took the numerical exam and you didn't do that well, I wouldn't say that you're at a disadvantage, as well as you can compensate on it for step two. I don't think you're going to be at any, you know, disadvantage compared to your counterparts who are applying with you and only get a pass.
What would you, like a resident you've heard and things like that, of like what a good jump is? Because I know that's like a lot of questions that I'm sure people have. Like, what is is it a 10-point jump, a 20-point jump? Like, what is what have you heard on the other side of things?
Yeah, I think that it kind of depends where you, like, how well or how poorly you do on step one, right? Because the way step one and step two and step three are all scored is based off the fact that, like, once you get into the higher scoring range, it's harder to increase the score, right? If you get one question right, it's maybe only going to give you 1 point when you're in that 260, 270 range, versus if you get an extra point right, and then you're in like the 210s, 220s range on step one, like that's a much bigger jump. So I would say probably if you're in like, if say on step one you do like in the 230s, I would say if you do a 10-point increase, 230 to 240, that is a huge difference. Likewise, or on the other hand, if you get like a 210 on step one and then you get a 220 on step two, that's good, but it probably doesn't look as good as you going from like a 210 to like a 230, which is very possible between step one and step two.
Yeah, just don't do worse.
Just don't do worse. But if you do, there's still ways to compensate for your application. But at the same time, try to do much better on step two. Because I agree. I think that that's what program directors are going to use this upcoming cycle, because they're just going to be like, I don't know what to do with this double information.
Sure. Do you have feedback? Somebody said that there's interface when we speak. I don't know. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I didn't know if, yeah, okay. Maybe it's just the connection or something.
Yeah. Here, I'll bring this a little closer maybe so
Yeah.
my voice is louder.
Phones, I don't know if that will help or not, because I am talking like down. So maybe maybe you can hear me. People can hear me clearer.
Trying to think of what else. Do you have any questions kind of, that you're thinking about kind of heading into the year where you apply, like in terms of your exam scores and stuff like that?
Oh, can you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, no worries. I was just gonna say, I'm not sure that I have like too much more to say about step one, really like going PassFail and like kind of my thoughts on what program directors are going to do. Oh wait, you're frozen. Everyone in the audience, can you hear me still talking? I think Austin is frozen, but can you hear me? Someone give me a thumbs up. I asked the question in the question box. Yeah, we're getting there. Can someone just tell me if they can hear me? Great, you can hear me. Great, fantastic. So I'm just going to wait to see if Austin's coming back in. I suppose I can start answering some questions in the meantime while I wait for him to come back. Let me scroll up and find where you guys started. Okay, here I see the first one. Also, I'm going to just drop my handle in here just in case I don't get through everyone's questions. My DMs are always open, and a lot of the questions you guys ask are commonly asked questions by everybody else, so I tend to just make posts answering them. So I'm just going to leave my handle in the bottom in case I don't get to all of your questions tonight. Cool. And that being said, Austin is coming back in.
Yay.
Yay!
I don't know what that was about. Sorry.
I lost you.
I know. Oopsie.
But there you are. I can't remember if you were asking me a question or...
You were asking something about my timeline, and then I needed a repeat of the question, and then I timed out or something like that.
Gotcha. No, I was just wondering, because I feel like I don't have too much more to add on like my opinion in terms of like what I think this upcoming application cycle is going to be like in terms of step one going PassFail. And I didn't know if you had any questions, like in particular as an upcoming applicant.
No, I mean, I just think that my thought process, and I could be totally wrong, but I think it's going to be shifted more towards step two. So I think going PassFail, I think if you had a score, it could possibly help you, right? Versus a PassFail as an IMG student, maybe not as a, maybe less so, more so if you're a US. But I think, I think the weight is going to slowly shift more towards step two. And then for people, now there's nothing we can do about it. So I think, don't worry and don't stress and make sure you knock step two out of the park so that, that you have a good score with that, and they can you don't fall through any filters based off of that score, and they can't my thought is that they can no longer use step one as a filter, because how can they, a pass versus a score, there's no filter for that possibility. So that won't be really a filter, I think. I could be wrong though.
No, I mean, I agree. I think that the biggest thing to keep in mind, like surrounding this very ambivalent situation, is that one, program directors have been looking at step two more anyway. So don't freak out about it if you're, they've been looking at step two more already, like even in the past years. So I wouldn't worry too much if you were hoping to have a numerical score and you wind up having a PassFail. And then my other opinion on this is just like reminding yourself what the exams were designed for, right? The purpose of the USMLE exam was to test your medical knowledge. Do you have the minimum medical knowledge to be a successfully practicing physician in the United States? The exams were never designed to stratify applicants into good, better, best. It was not designed for that. And so essentially we are at a point where that's what program directors are using it for. And the exam is no longer serving its purpose. So it's just becoming pass-fail, which is what it was meant to do in the first place. So just keep that in mind too, going forward. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree. And like, especially those that have like shelves or things like that along the way, like those are really good prep tools for when you take CK, and you even take, like, if you go to like a Caribbean medical school like we do and have a comp. I think if you are shooting to do well on all of those and you're studying along the way, you essentially have been studying for a solid year, and you have a good foundation when you go into, if you do, you know, several weeks of dedicated studying before you take CK.
Yeah, I echo that. I could not agree more. I think the most difficult part when people ask me how long did I take to study for step 2 CK, is that in reality I took 2 weeks of dedicated, but my prep was much like beyond that. Like you just mentioned, every single rotation I was prepping for each shelf as if it were a mini step 2 exam. And so realistically, I studied for step 2 CK for an entire year.
Exactly. Yeah.
In terms of dedicated, I took 2 weeks. And so I always find that question kind of difficult to answer because, you know, there's only so much you can accomplish in 2 weeks. And so just take any time you have the opportunity to take some type of NBME exam, just remember that those used to be questions, and they're excellent prep tools like Austin just mentioned.
True. And it's hard to, I think there's no one cookie cutter answer for how to schedule your step 2. I think that was a question, because it's rotation dependent. It's how you set up your electives. And once you're out of cores, it's kind of how you set up your schedule. And if you scheduled really hard electives in the beginning, I mean, is that really the time to take an important exam? Probably not. So if you're thinking about how to structure yourself as a third year, you know, think about when you think you want to take your CK, and then try to structure your electives around that, knowing that like that month you're gonna be, you know, your mind is gonna be elsewhere for half that rotation. So
yeah, I agree. And that's really tough too, because the beginning of 4th year, you're kind of trying to fit in all these electives that, you know, you're hoping to get letters of recommendation from. If you're applying to like a residency subspecialty that's not necessarily like a core rotation. Like for example, like for us, neurology was not a core rotation. And so I know my friends for neurology, like really focused on just, you know, they were not CK. If I have to take it later, so be it. I need to get good letters of recommendation and have like 2 really good solid auditions before I can even think about studying for CK.
Sure.
So I agree. I think it's a very individualized answer. And if you think you can handle both, great. But if you really think that you're going to be preoccupied during an audition elective, then I agree that it's not the time, especially now that that's like the one exam score that matters. I don't think that if you don't think you can handle both at the same time, I wouldn't recommend them.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, that's pretty much my thought process on PassFail. I think it is here. The time has come, and we'll be ready. I guess it'll be interesting to see after this first cycle. I guess after this next match, we'll really have more data, and you know, once they put out numbers and things like that. So
I agree. It's really interesting, actually, like counseling people like through the match process and application and everything, and just thinking about how much it's changed since I applied, which was only like 2.5 years ago. Everything's virtual. Step 1 is going pass-fail. There's this half and half situation. Step 2 CS doesn't exist anymore. Like so much has changed since I applied, and it wasn't that long ago.
No, I know. That's why I feel like the advice you probably give on like your timeline for applying and the things that you did to go into the match is like, like you said, there's so many things that are different now, and a lot of it has to do with the whole COVID situation. But we'll see. This is just another layer on, I guess. Yeah,
I agree. It looks like people are asking if we can start answering their questions. So I guess if we want to start answering questions,
do it.
The way I typically do this is we kind of like alternate questions. You can go first on the first one, and if there's like anything, like any opinion I have, I'll just add it on top. If not, we can just keep going through it.
Perfect.
Cool.
Cool.
So the first question I have here is, what is the thing you wish you could have done differently at the start of your application cycle? I guess this one's for me. Okay. If there was one thing I could have done differently at the beginning of my application cycle, I truthfully would say that I would have probably applied to less programs, actually, which people might find a little bit striking. Um, I think that as IMGs, we get a lot of information just based on, who we are and what bucket we fall into, which is that IMG, either US or non-US IMG bucket. Likewise, US medical students fall into either the USMD or the USDO bucket. And even though there are like general rules of thumb that are like kind of given by your school in terms of statistics to like help you match, you really need to take into consideration your holistic application and the programs that you're deciding to apply to. So my biggest advice is always apply smart, and I think I did that. I got more than enough interviews. I did not go to half of my interviews, to be honest. And I think that was kind of a waste of money. So I would say, yes, it is a very scary process, and there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding every single step, from submitting the application to getting your letters of recommendation, whether they should be from someone in the U.S., someone abroad, someone who saw you in basic sciences versus clinical science, and then just making the rank list and trying to figure out, where program directors put you and where you want to see yourself and what your own goals are. There's just like so much ambivalence. Just kind of like stay true to yourself when you're applying to. Like if you genuinely have a strong application and your step scores are through the roof, and even if you are a non-US IMG, if you are applying to places who traditionally accept non-US IMGs, you probably do not have to apply to 200 to 150 programs. And so I think that's one thing that I would have gone back and changed if I could.
Do you think that that's specialty specific?
I do. I think that if I were to have applied to neurology, family medicine, or pediatrics, in addition to internal medicine, which I obviously applied, I think that holds true for all of them. I think that in terms of surgery and surgery related specialties such as OBGYN and all the surgical subspecialties, I think they're a little bit different in the sense that, you have to be willing to apply a little bit broader because there's not as many, it's more competitive for IMG. So there's not as many IMG friendly programs, albeit they do exist. There are many surgery programs that are IMG friendly, but not nearly as many as there are in internal medicine or family medicine or pediatrics. So I think that, again, if you have a good application and you are doing your research and you are applying to programs that accept IMGs, your step score range falls within, again, now we're kind of talking about solely step 2, and programs that are in like locations that tend to traditionally accept IMGs, I think your chances of matching are higher. Don't just like blindly apply. Like it's great like if you want to do surgery, but like applying to all, I don't know how many surgery programs there are, like 350, 360. Applying to all 360 programs doesn't do anything. Like the reality is like Johns Hopkins, Penn, like Ivy League schools, like don't apply to those. Like that is it. Don't do it. Just apply where you are going to be competitive, because applying broadly is good, but applying everywhere doesn't mean anything. So just be smart about it. And you can still kind of save money and also match where you want to match in what you want to match in.
No, I think that's too with it going like virtual now, like you have more opportunity to go to all these, but then it comes at some point, it's like, how do you even schedule all? And I had numerous friends that are actually in the current match right now, and they gave up interviews towards the end when they were just like, okay, I'm done. I've been doing like 3 or 4 a week for like a month and a half, and it's a lot. So
yeah,
it
is
and
a
it's
lot.
just because you get all of these, and then if you are fortunate, you get the response, but some of them may have not even been your even your middle pick, let alone your top. So like she said,
Exactly. So I think that's what I would have done differently. I know that that's kind of striking information, especially because people tend to want to apply to more, but just be smart about applying so that you can apply to like a lot, but not everywhere, essentially. So I'm going to find a question that's for you. I guess that one's
It's
kind of
probably, they're probably more interested in your in your advice.
in Germany it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Save this life. I will save the life, I promise. So yeah, I think this is probably something that you can answer. Thoughts on obtaining observerships for international medical graduates who are currently now living in the United States? Any thoughts, recommendations, or advice for that?
You know, I think, you know, if you're not affiliated with your school, you're kind of working on your own now. It's to, I think, choose programs that you're interested in. One, start with choosing programs that you're interested in going to, because they're going to be hard to obtain no matter what. And I noticed that even now with COVID, they're even harder to obtain. And so, but then you need to find, you know, sometimes they have like a advisor that like kind of runs the medical students, or the, you know, the clerkship. I don't forget their title, but you can find them, clerkship. What are they, like administrators, and email them, and you know, ask them if they have, you know, what's available. I think be flexible. And then if not, you know, you can even try to reach out to, you know, the coordinator for the program director. Maybe he or she has an assistant. You can email them, and maybe they can get in touch with the person within the hospital that is that contact person. I haven't had too familiar with it. I think my school set all mine up for me. I was very fortunate with that. So I haven't had to find any per se on my own. But that's what I've been told is, you know, kind of the direction that you go when trying to get these.
Yeah, that's been kind of what I heard as well. My school also set them up for me, but if you're doing this on your own, I did do an interview with one of my friends who matched into neurology, and she is a non-USIMG. She's from Venezuela, and she matched into neurology here in the US, and she kind of goes through her experience in terms of obtaining research and clinical experience in the US, and from basically the conversation that we had during the interview, she basically said that you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get many no's, but you have to be persistent, and eventually someone will say yes. And I know right now, and with COVID, it's really tough, because I know, you know, at my institution, we were accepting, like, you know, outside medical students up until this all happened. And now it's really just for the medical students who are at my institution. There's no outside rotators coming through, just to kind of limit the amount of people. So it's really, really tough. The other thing I would say is, if you can find like a virtual elective, I think that, you know, this obviously isn't as good as being in person, but it's something. And I think that it allows you to still demonstrate your skills in terms of presentation and clinical knowledge. Those are two things that really matter to program directors when they're looking at applicants. And both of these can still be demonstrated virtually. And then lastly, it kind of gives you the opportunity to it allows you the opportunity to network. So if your preceptor is virtual, it's still an opportunity for you to get to know them, and maybe, you know, if you do well in your rotation, they can reach out somewhere on your behalf. So you know, they're obviously not as good as being in person, but there's still a lot of benefits that can come through them.
Also too, if you don't need credit, because I know some people just want exposure. If they, you know, they've already done, they're trying to get some credit, you can, you know, if they say no on an elective, they maybe say yes on volunteering, or maybe you can see, do they have any lying around case reports that are unfinished, or any projects that are unfinished, and you know, you can pick that up and take that project as your own. And you know, that way they can see your face, and, you know, you can show your face, and, you know, volunteer your free time on, you know, whatever, maybe there's a service or something like that. So
yeah, I agree. It never hurts to ask. Next question I have in here is, when is the right time to send a letter of intent? So again, I presume that this is more directed towards me.
Yeah.
I personally, I did not send a letter of intent, and this gave me a lot of anxiety, because all of my friends were sending letters of intent, but my #1 program actually specifically asked us not to do so. And so I went back and forth as to whether or not I was going to do it anyway. And in the end, I decided not to, and I'm happy that I didn't, because I wound up matching at where I wanted to be. I will say.
Well, I think if they said don't do it and then you do, you might have, you know, things might have been different.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? So I did what they asked.
That's the best thing.
But like watching everyone else write them and like seeing all the stuff on social media and the forums and like everyone just like writing them, I'm just like, oh my God, this is driving me insane. I will say if the programs you're interested in are accepting of sending letters of intent, probably like nowish is the time to send them, or whenever you do finalize your rank list, which I think it's usually due in like the middle of February. So coming up. My biggest advice. Go ahead.
Has this been a thought? Like I've heard that it doesn't really shift you that much, these letters of intent, but what helps is like a follow-up email, like a thank you. What would help you more is a thank you email after your interview. And in that you can kind of phrase like, you know, this was a program that I was very, very much interested in. And from there, they kind of know, okay, this candidate was serious about, you know, my program or whatnot. I don't know if that is, you know, another avenue, because I've heard that it doesn't really shift you on, these intent letters don't really shift you that much on a rank list per se.
Yeah, the thing is they don't. ACGME actually as a whole has like kind of discouraged like all post-interview communication, and it's for a good reason. Like it's in the applicant's best interest. They basically just feel like the process is stressful enough and there should not have to be any mind games of, you know, should I send this? Should I not send it? Is it going to affect me? Is it not? So they've just kind of discouraged it altogether. But, you know, medical students are creatures of habit. And so they, you know, we've been doing this for years. And so people continue to send them, and it's okay. It's not harmful. But also, yeah, it doesn't really do anything. Most, again, I'm speaking from my experience through the internal medicine application process. Most program directors actually meet weekly to bi-weekly, depending on how many times they interview throughout the week. And they actually make the rank lists as they go. So you sending a letter of intent in, you know, January, February, like most of them have already they have like their rank list like 90-95% done-ish. So I don't think that letters of intent actually really do anything. But I agree that, you know, sending the thank you email within like a 24-hour of your interview is probably more helpful than the letter of intent, though not 100% sure that it actually, it does anything either, really. If you do send thank you letters or letters of intent, you should be very, very specific as to what you enjoyed about on the interview. And if you are sending a letter of intent, do not tell your number 2 and number 3 program that they are your number 1 choices. Don't do it. You have to be honest. If you want to send a letter of intent to your number 1 and let them know you're number 1, that's fine. If you also want to send a letter of intent to your number 2 and number 3, that's also fine. But I would probably use the phrase like, I'm ranking you
favorably, yeah.
Yeah, rather than I'm ranking you number 1, because it's ultimately not true, and it's not going to serve you or them. So just be honest. But to answer your question in short, nowish is the time to be sending them if you want to, but I wouldn't feel compelled. Let's see. Should we shift our efforts to step 2 now and less effort for step 1 now, match 2026?
No less effort, but no less effort. Still, you know, you still want to score well. Plus, it's gonna only serve you better when you rotate and build that foundation for 2, because you know some of the stuff that carries over. You know, maybe not the minute, you know, biochem stuff, but the other stuff is, you know, will remain relevant. So. I don't even know, what is the passing score? Have they said yet? Is it still the same score?
I think they plan to keep it 196, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
not
me either.
I think they plan to keep it the same.
Okay.
But I agree. I wouldn't try less hard. I would shift efforts to focusing heavily on step 2 CK, but I wouldn't stop focusing on step
not at the cost of step 1. Yeah, I
agree, because I think this is the thing that a lot of people I've been hearing are kind of taking the wrong way. It's I'm going to study for step 2 and not really for step 1. Step 1 and step 2, like you said, have a strong correlation. Things repeat themselves. Believe it or not, step 3 is mostly step 1 and step 2 information as well. Yeah. So don't sacrifice step 1 just because step 2 is now going to be numerically scored, because just like we were talking about before, you know, it's if you have like say you just passed step 1 and you get like the 196, and then on step 2 you get, you know, the the 220. Well, it's easier to get a 250 on step 2 if you got a 230 on step 1. Yeah, it's a pass, but it's like a high pass. But if you're just barely passing with the pass fail exam, it's going to be very difficult to get a good score on step 2.
Sure. And it's like a good indicator, like the whole the whole process of it all, like it gives you, you know, you'll have one down and you'll feel more confident going into the next one, having done like the whole process and taking it seriously, as if you're trying to get the highest score possible, you know. Yeah. So I think everyone should still set their same goal, like, as you know, I want a 250, or I want a 260, or I want a 240. Whatever your goal is, you should still maintain that goal and thought process, and disregard the fact that it's pass fail.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
It'll serve you better, I think, studying wise.
Agree. Can you please tell us what the last month to take step 2 is for the 2023 match? So that'll be your match, right?
That is my match. Well, our school probably, like your school, is different, where they, you know, they want it done by July, but you can really take it later, and it just won't. I don't know what the deadline is for it to show up on your application. That I don't. It's probably online, but our school requires it at a certain point, or you know, they don't like verify you and all that kind of stuff. So, but I don't have an exact date. I don't know if you do.
I don't have an exact date for the 2023 cycle, but I do know that, you know, this is kind of really two questions, because the first is, you know, when's the last date to take it, right? You can really take step 2 whenever you want. You can take it in December of 2022, even if you're applying for the 2023 match, right?
Sure.
Some US students who are going into really competitive specialties, if they do really well on step 1, they don't want the anxiety of possibly doing worse on step 2. And so they actually like take it during interview season, so that like it's just shows up on their application, like as they're interviewing and like as they're ranking. Whereas that may not be as so beneficial for IMGs, because a lot of programs do worry about like us passing our exams. And so you should take step 2 before you apply. For it to show up on your application, so again, the application process is different, but for me, our application opened like, we had to submit them like on the 10th or the 15th of September. And so the last date to take step 2, if we wanted to have it show up for program directors on day 1, was 3 weeks prior to that. So it would have been end of August. So yeah. I'm assuming the timeline is probably similar, but the dates aren't going to be exactly the same.
I would say August would be like,
agree.
Seems like, yeah, our school says July, but a lot of people took it in August. I think if you took it in August, you would be safe. It's a safe number. Taking it past then is like, you know, and then heaven forbid if something was to happen with that exam, you know, then, you know, gives you cushion too.
Yeah, agree. The next question we have here is U.S. clinical experience worth doing? It's very expensive.
I think it's like an audition rotation too for those non-US IMGs, and it puts a face to the name, and it shows them, you know, your dedication to that, you know, their area or that program, if it's a place that you're trying to apply. So in that regard, I would say yes. What do you think as a resident? I don't know.
I think that U.S. clinical experience is expensive. Medical school for us in the U.S. is through the roof in terms of pricing. It's not cheap. We're all in debt. And I think the large majority of us feel as though it was worth it. I would say if you don't have U.S. clinical experience, you can still match, but I think that you put yourself in a much better position to, 1, match in general, but 2, match it somewhere where you really want to be and you feel like you're really going to reach your goals your career goals. So I think that it is worth doing. Like I said before, it's really not even just the clinical experience that you get out of it. It's the audition, like Austin mentioned, it's the networking that you get. And then also another thing that sometimes programs are a little ambivalent on as well is, you know, how steep is the learning curve going to be from someone who's not from the US, because our healthcare system is so incredibly different than everywhere else in the world. And the learning curve of residency is steep in general, let alone to someone who has no idea how the system works, right? So even just doing like a 4-week rotation and kind of
Yeah,
getting
that's
the
what I was
nuts and
gonna say.
bolts of how the system works, I think honestly is really helpful.
Yeah, I would say like if you could get one or two, I mean, to do them all is not, I don't think, if it's tight, if it's super expensive, I wouldn't say that has to be done. But yeah, one or two.
I agree. Is not passing step 1 first a death toll now? I
I
guess
think it's special. I don't think, I wouldn't say that because I mean, there are definitely people that have attempts or red flags on there and they match. I think it depends on the specialty. I think, some of the more competitive specialties, they use that as a filter. And your chance of even getting an interview is slim, uh, versus, some, more broader like internal medicine or maybe family medicine. Not as many programs use an attempt as a filter and you have a better opportunity. So I think it depends on the specialty that you desire, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, just kind of building off of that, before, like when step 1 it was numerically scored, not passing step 1 on your first attempt was still like a red flag to like a handful of programs,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think that that's really going to change much. I think that you not passing step 1 on your first attempt is going to be the same red flag to the same programs it was when it was numerically scored.
Right.
And it's not going to matter to the same programs it didn't matter to when it was numerically scored. So I don't really think that's going to change all that much.
Sure. I agree.
And the one thing I just thought of that I wanted to mention with the U.S. clinical experience question a few minutes ago is it really depends on what specialty you're going into, right? Like if you want to go into like surgery or like I don't know like derm or something, like you pretty much have to do U.S. clinical experience if you want to match into one of those fields. Versus I think your primary care based specialties you might be able to get away with matching without doing U.S. clinical
Sure.
experience. So it also depends on what you plan to do. Is there a timeline of when you should take your step exams?
No, I mean, I think for like our school, it's usually like step 1 before you enter your clinical rotations, and usually most candidates take step 2 after they finish their core rotations, but before they apply. And then step 3 usually, either if they have a gap between graduation and residency or during residency, is the kind of timeline that Caribbean schools usually follow. But I've had multiple friends that are non-US IMGs, from like Europe and such, and they've taken their steps all before they applied in various orders. I've had friends that've taken 2 before 1, and then they took 3, and then they just had all of their steps done before they applied. And I know a lot of non-US IMGs will have done all 3 of their steps to increase their chances of matching. And I hear it bodes well for them.
Yeah, I don't have really anything to add to that. I just, if you are a non-US IMG, taking step 3 before you apply can just be beneficial because again, like program directors have this, hesitancy is, oh, are they going to pass? Are they going to pass step 3? Like
Right.
they have to worry about you passing your specialty specific boards and then also your step 3 as well. And so if you just take it and show them like, hey, listen, I'm passed, it's all good, it's all done, then I agree. I think that it tends to bode well for people.
Oh, somebody just posted that question too. I just answered it. Somebody just asked about the step 3. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. If one was initially planning to apply in 2022, received all letters of recommendation on ERAS and ended up postponing and will apply 2023, should they have the letter writers change the date again on the same letters?
I think I've heard yes, but I don't have a 100% answer. But
I would assume yes.
I heard that they want a closely dated, because I've known that most of my letter writers, some of them that I've asked during my 3rd year, but because I missed the match because of COVID, I was going to be basically a delayed. And so they said, just come back to me after the next, when it's time for next year, and just, stay in touch, and I'll write your letter at that time. So it's, dated for the, the right application.
Yeah, agree.
cycle.
And it sounds like this person might even already have the letter. So I would really just email the letter writers back, let them know that you had something come up and that you plan to apply for 2023. And that's probably, they'll probably just update the letter.
Yeah, it's probably very easier
It's
fix
probably
for
pretty
them.
easy for them.
Yeah.
How much can away rotations help in getting terms of interviews? I feel like we kind of already talked about this.
It can help.
Yeah.
TLDR.
Yeah, a lot of places, not a lot, but like there are a handful of places that do what are called like courtesy interviews. So as long as you rotate there, you get an interview. It doesn't mean you'll be ranked highly, but you at least get the interview. So that's another reason that doing away rotations. In
And
addition,
some
to,
even
go ahead.
some even do like the rotate. They ask you like you want your interview now, and they'll interview like during the rotation, which means when the application cycle comes, you don't get the interview because you got it then. So that really helps too. Like if you are really serious about the program and you felt like you shined during that 2 or 4 week or whatever week rotation it was, then I mean I think capitalize on that opportunity.
Agree. Building your network is never a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Would applying to 2 different specialties hurt our application, not as a backup, just because they're not too different from each other? I think this is an interesting question. If you are passionate about both specialties and you want to apply to both, that's okay. I think that's actually a good reason to apply to 2 specialties. I think the whole idea of a backup specialty is something that I was never really comfortable with, just because, we all work really hard to get here and to become a doctor. And, being being an internist when you want to be an emergency room physician, or being a family practitioner when you want to be a surgeon, is just, they're not the same. And the passion that wakes you up every morning is just not the same. And so I've never really been a huge fan of the idea of a backup specialty, unless like being a doctor is your only goal. But if you have specific career goals in mind, I've never been a fan as applying as a backup. But it sounds like the person who's asking this question just genuinely thinks that they're very similar. And so I would say in that sense, it's okay to apply to both. Not that it's not okay to apply to backup specialty, of course it is. That's just my personal preference. But I think that this is a very good reason to apply to 2 specialties. But what I would recommend is they are going to ask you if, like, for example, like internal medicine and family medicine, people feel like are very similar. On your interviews, you are going to be asked why internal medicine or why family medicine, and you need to have a good reason for each. So you do need to spend some time sorting out the differences as to kind of which ones you like a little bit better. So you know which parts of them you're really passionate about, so that comes through on those specific interviews.
I agree. Yeah. I agree.
We talked about the step 2 deadline already. In general, do programs look at IMG applications separately from AMGs, or all mixed together? Do programs usually have a cap for number of IMGs they take? This is kind of like a loaded question. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
I would say in general, I don't think that it depends again on the program you're applying to. If you are applying to a program that doesn't accept a lot of IMGs, the chance that their program director looks at AMG applications before they look at IMG's applications is very high. So they probably do separate them out. If you're applying somewhere that traditionally accepts a good number of IMGs, the chance that they look at IMGs and AMG's applications together is very high. So it just really depends on the program that you're applying to. So do your research. You guys have Match a Resident, which is a really great resource to use in terms of which programs tend to accept a lot of IMGs, and which ones are going to be most friendly for your level of like competitive application. So use it, and I would recommend kind of using that. But I think it really depends on where you're applying as to whether or not they separate those applications out. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of the cap of number of IMGs, it's the same thing, right? Like, if you're applying somewhere that doesn't ever take IMGs, the cap is probably 0. If you're applying somewhere that takes like 70% a year, they probably don't care how many people they interview. It just, some years they happen to have more IMGs, and some years they happen to have like maybe a little bit less. But I don't think that programs really have caps.
Yeah, what was been told to me in the past is like, seriously consider or seriously think about the programs that don't take IMGs if you really think you will be, the first one taken there. And so if you are, when we talked earlier about how many applications or how many things you send out, you know, those one would be some that you could cut back on if you know, if they're taking one, or the last one they took was in 2015 and it's been, you know, 7 years. You know, really consider if that's, you know, if they think they're going to really be taking another one.
I definitely agree. Just because we're getting close to like the hour mark, I'm gonna throw my handle in here for the questions we don't get the time to answer, so that people can like reach out to me and ask.
Oh, same. Oh, they have my handle, but I guess I can add it to them. But I think they have.
But we have time for a couple more questions. We have like 10 minutes yet.
Okay.
What is the latest you can submit a letter of recommendation during an audition rotation? Would you still have time to submit a letter of recommendation from them?
You could take that one.
Yep. The latest is, it's tough, especially if you're applying for one of those non-core specialties, right? Like, I keep using neurology as an example because I have so many friends who are in neuro and I watch them stress about it so much. If you can do your first 2 audition rotations in like August, September, or September, October, that's more than enough time for you to submit the letters and still get interviews. Trying to get one from that September rotation is really key because you need at least one letter for the specialty in which you are applying in order for them to, you know, kind of take you seriously. So yeah, if you do one in September, that's okay. If you do one in October, that's also okay. It's just a little on the later side, but some specialties interview later, and so in that case, that's okay. Again, you have to do research on kind of your specific subspecialty and when they tend to send out their peak interview invites. But I think as long as you have one letter of recommendation for the specialty in which you are applying by like mid to end of September, I think that's very much okay. And also, if you are applying to programs, you can also email them and let them know that like you have a letter upcoming. You're just finishing up your audition and your letter writer's in the process of writing it. And most programs are very open to that as well.
That goes to show that goes with any significant update. Oh, like if you have a publication that comes out or anything significant that didn't make the original application, please like email them and say, you know, in addition, this is updated information.
Yeah, I agree. What tends to be a good number of interviews to get to ensure you're most likely to match? I know it depends on each interview goes, but let's just say all your interviews go well. Yeah, so I'll just take this one because I have a good resource, and it's called NRMP, Charting the Outcomes. You can Google this for every year. It gives you the prior year's match data. And pretty much every single year for pretty much every single specialty, the magic number is like 12. If you get 12 interviews and they all go well, or whatever that means, then you have like a 97% chance of matching.
But if you only get 3, don't, like, you know, it only takes 1.
Right. Yeah, like don't withdraw your application just because you only have 3 interviews. Like if your first program loved you, that's all you need. All you need is 1.
1. Yeah.
All you need is 1. Let's see, there's also this question box here. There's a bunch. Any tips on how to achieve a high step 2 CK? We kind of already talked about with prepping for shelves and using your using your NBME resources to the best of your ability. Advice on what we should include on our CV. Is okay to include research and volunteer experience from undergrad?
Absolutely. Oh, from undergrad. If it's relevant to medically related and it's medically relevant, then yes. If it's you know, a random babysitting job or something like that, I probably would not, you know, include that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have much to add. It's a pretty straightforward question. What else? Do you think taking Step 3 before residency will help with competitiveness? Or we kind of already answered this as well. How important is research to matching?
That is specialty specific. You know,
Agreed.
And I think there is also online too, there is they post like how many publications they have per specialty, and like family medicine, internal medicine, they're lower, like, you know, 2 to 5. But if you're doing like derm or ENT, they really like a lot of, or even some of the surgical specialties, they really like a lot of to see 5+ publications or abstracts or case reports or things like that. So depends on your specialty.
Agree. Incredibly specialty dependent. What do we have next? Can I say that I am a USIMG if I have a US residency card, even if I'm not a US citizen yet? So I don't know. That's actually an interesting question, because from this is probably just like the definition being very vague and not well defined.
Yeah.
I think like my understanding was like, if you were born here, you are a USIMG. If you were not born here, whether or not you have a green card or whatever, then you are a non-US IMG.
I guess if you have citizenship, though, right?
Agree.
That would make
Yeah, I think once you become a
USIMG.
formal citizen, it's different. Then you would, by definition, be a US IMG because you are a US citizen. But if you're still in green card status, I think that you're probably still non-US IMG. But again, with programs, like especially when you bring up talking about visas and stuff like that, that's something that you can talk about too. Just like the fact that you are in the process of getting your citizenship, and that might change, and then they might not have to sponsor your visa and stuff like that. Again, the girl that I interviewed from Venezuela who matched into neurology, she talked about pretty extensively about her discussions on like visas and stuff like that during residency. She's like, do not be afraid to bring it up. Like you have to talk about it. So that's definitely something you can bring up in interviews. But I assume that the reason you're asking is because it kind of depends on which bucket you get put into on your application, USIMG versus
what box she checks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I see 2 more questions, so I guess we'll answer them, and then any ones beyond that, they can just direct message us. Do program directors after interviews consider step 1 for ranking applicants?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Basically, do program directors use step 1 as a criteria to rank you?
Oh.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
The answer, which is also online, I actually learned this I went to the ACP, American College of Physicians conference as a 4th-year med student, and they had like a talk that was specifically directed for like IMGs matching into residency, and it was like the top, they gave the top like 5 factors that program directors use to select you for an interview, in which step 1 is unfortunately numero uno. And then they also gave us the top 5 factors that program directors use to rank applicants. And numbers 1, 2, and 3 had absolutely nothing to do with step exams. Number 1 was your interactions with the faculty and residents on interview day. Number 2 was interpersonal communication skills. And number 3 also had something to do with like interview day, but it had absolutely nothing to do with step exam. So as long as like they feel like you're a good fit and you hold a good conversation with them, that's more important to them in ranking you versus, getting the good step 1 score and the good letters of recommendation, which is important for them to pick you. So even if you have like not so great of a step 1 score and you get an interview at somewhere you're really surprised that you're getting an interview at, as long as you do really well on the interview, they're probably going to rank you high. Your step score doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, what I was told too is like, once you get the interview, the programs would be happy to take any of those candidates they interview. And then at that point, it's your interview and how they feel like you fit in with the program. But you've kind of made it past all of their check marks once you've gotten that interview. So it's something to be less worried about. At that point, it's like focus on your interview and, show your dedication to the program. And, if you're a match for them and they are a match for you.
Agree. Okay, what's your opinion on telling a program they're your number 1 choice, or is it better to tell your 4 to 5 programs that they're your number 1? We talked about this already. Do not tell your numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 program that they are your number 1. That is very bad. So here, there's one more question in the box, so we'll answer this and then we'll head out. I'm interested in radiology. I'm worried about not being competitive enough without a step 1 score. Do you think a high step 2 score is enough? So far, I have 1 publication and I have a couple of volunteer experiences so far. I'm a 2nd-year non-US IMG.
So she's applying to the match without a step one. Is that the
No,
question?
it sounds like the concern is they haven't applied for the match yet. They're going to be taking step one, but it's going to be pass-fail rather than numerical. And the concern is that with only one publication and with only pass-fail step score, is step two enough to set he or she apart from her fellow co-applicants?
This is yet to be determined. We don't know that yet, but I mean, at this point, you know, if she has, you know, we're at that point where you have to take step one with the pass or fail. I would say if she could get one more publication, if she or he, I don't know, I think it's a she, maybe can get another audition rotation at a place that has radiology, and network, maybe go to a conference, things like that. Those are other ways. You have to start thinking out of the box and other ways to boost your application. So that's if it's you've kind of exhausted your research, maybe you can try to find a conference that can network you better. So think of outside other factors where you can shine, because you're kind of in a box. Like you can't really do anything about the step issue.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Only control what you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a great ending point is here. We actually have an IR attending in the comments who says, only tell your top program that they're your number one. If they rank you number one and you don't go there, they're going to remember you. It's a very small world. A very prominent program director told him so. And I 100% second that. And I love they're backing us up on our thoughts.
Yeah.
It's just,
I mean, it's also just stay true to yourself. Like you don't want to be that person that is untruthful. So
exactly. So that's all the questions. I think we actually got through all of them. And so
I hope we helped.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope our 2 cents provided some value. This was fun. We should do this again.
Well, yours does. Yours definitely does. You're more further along than me. So
yeah, but you're more familiar with the current application process.
Yeah, this is true. I know we should do one all the changes when we get closer to like when we're starting when the new application basically cycles up. We should reconvene.
I agree. We should do this again. Thank you, audience. We hope we helped. If you have any more questions for the two of us, just direct message us. Austin's handle is obviously with him here, and I put mine in the chat a few minutes ago, which is now just very lost by all the people who are joining and exiting, but that's okay. I'll drop it before we leave. And I think that Match a Resident will be saving this so that you guys can go back to it and refer to it whenever you guys want.
Yep. And you can always refer to the post to find either of our handles if it gets lost in the comments. True.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, have a good rest of your week, and thank you guys for joining. And okay, bye-bye.
Bye.